we've been critical of Bernie for not fighting hard enough in his campaign. That he ran a mealy-mouthed, nice and nice campaign. He never landed a knockout punch because he wouldn't throw one. And he's being courteous in the middle of Armageddon. And but guess what? There's some audio recording of him giving it to a reporter. Finally, Bernie Sanders decided to snap at somebody. And it was a reporter. Axios had reported that he was ending his campaign. And I guess he hasn't ended it yet, even though there's no campaign to do. And so this set him off. You want to hear it? Here it goes. Here's what happened. The reporter says to him, "Sir, what are you saying to your supporters? There's been all of this flurry today." And he says, "Well, some of that was said was just untrue." He sent out a statement. So that what was untrue was Axios saying that they're dropping out. So that's what he means. So here we go. Here's the recording.
So what do you say to your supporters? There's been all this flurry today. Can you say a few?
Some of what was said was just untrue. We sent out a statement.
What's your time frame?
I'm going to stop with this. I'm dealing with a global crisis. You know, we're dealing with it. You're asking me these questions. Right?
Running for president. So
well, right now I'm running. Right now I'm trying to do my best to make sure that we don't have an economic meltdown and that people don't die. Is that enough for you? Can you be busy tonight?
Well, let's watch it again.
So what do you say to your supporters?
So what do you say to your supporters during all this
Can you say a few?
Some of what was said was just untrue. We sent out a statement.
What's your time frame? So then the guy says, "What's your time frame for dropping out?" And he snaps. And he says to him, "You have to stop with this. I'm dealing with a fucking global crisis. You know, we're dealing with it." So he says, "Fucking." Just like Beto O'Rourke. So let's listen to him say.
I'm going to stop with this. I'm dealing with a global crisis. You know, we're dealing with it. You're asking me these questions. Right?
I'm so glad we're still bleeping swear words during a crisis and a pandemic. Oh, people don't want to hear that word fucking. Just give them a good bleep.
Anyway. Where's that
Bernie?
Bernie?
On stage on Sunday like that.
Yeah, should have said, "Joe, we're dealing with a fucking pandemic, and you don't want to fucking give people health care? You want people to be dying in the streets like they are now anyway?"
Okay, so fuck this goddamn cam. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, sure, words hurt. I get that. But, do you want people to express themselves openly? I mean, everybody knows what Bernie means when he says, "I'm dealing with the..." Right? I mean, it's one of his few moments of complete honesty, right? I mean, I've never made any secret out of the fact that I disagree with Bernie on a lot of, on supporting establishment Democrats. But I've also made no secret of the fact that I know that he's doing the best he can. I mean, third party's no way to go. Not for him at this time. Maybe in a few years, you never know, you know. Maybe they can get more than 1.4% of the vote. But right now, you know, the hope is that he would win the nomination, he would take over the party, and he would grow the progressive movement exponentially, right? Kind of as fast as a virus. And that was my hope too. I mean, that was my hope back in 2014 when, I could say I, because I was the one who started the whole thing, but we courted him. And I will admit that I made a mistake in courting Warren. I didn't know that much about her. I should have looked a little deeper into her, because all she is a fucking typical Oklahoma housewife, and I know what they're like. I mean, I lived in Tulsa for a little while, for a year, and I know what that's all about. Come on, Cam. I know you can do better than this. Okay. And you know, I mean, she's a typical house flipping, do anything for yourself or anybody who you think might do something for you, which in her case is establishment Democrats. And how do they do what they do? They throw the rest of us under the bus, right? Don't even ask me, because the only thing I can come up with is they believe that we live in a world where pain and suffering is just a requirement, you know. So somebody has to suffer in order for them and all their little soccer moms to take their little kids to, you know, I don't know, soccer camp or whatever. And so fuck everybody else. Fuck the people on food stamps. Fuck the people on Obamacare. Fuck everybody, as long as I can have my house in the suburbs and send my kids to all white schools. And I mean, you get it, right? I mean, I don't have to draw you a picture. If I do, this is a little pink house for you and me. There you go. I drew it for you. All right. So, geez, I don't know what to say now. So yeah, we supported, or we courted Warren for a short period of time. Now, you want to know how this whole Bernie thing got started? Okay. I was on Facebook back in 2014, and I decided to join all the Democratic groups, right? Liberal America, Democratic Cafe 2.0, and all these things, right? And when I got in there, I started saying, no, I'm not going to vote for Hillary with a $sign. Hillary with a $sign. Okay? I know what she's all about because I lived in Indonesia and I watched her and her friends take over the government through, I mean, I wasn't there for the coup, but I was there for the after effect. And her and her friends were all there in intelligence capacity, supporting the Suharto government, who was president at the time, if you want to call him a president. He was a dictator, to get Indonesia's oil, to pump Indonesia's oil out from under them. And one of our friends, a guy named Christopher Ashby, he was bringing in ex-Vietnam veterans, or Vietnam veterans or whatever, to support and train. And you say, well, how do you know that, Martin Drummond? How do you know that they were supporting Suharto? How do you know that they were making... Well, I mean, 90% of that is... sorry, is pretty well known, right? Okay, but then you don't get to see it from the inside, right? So our water pump goes out in our house and we have to move into this local hotel, and these people who were friends of my parents, they used to come over and play bridge. They come to all our parties, and the Ashbys were bringing them in. And so I'm in his hotel room. He's an ex-Vietnam vet, and his suitcase is lying wide open on the bed, and he's got all these I guess aluminum tubes in there. And I go, man, what are all those aluminum tubes? And he goes, well, they're blowguns. And I go, what do you need blowguns for? And he says, well, I go out into the countryside and I train commandos to sneak up on labor leaders, labor people, and kill them with these blowguns, right? Poison darts, I guess, is all I can think about. Now, you can take it from there. You can take it from there. You can figure it out. I don't have to draw you another picture, a little tree here, a little hut, a nice house, maybe even a labor leader out on his porch, a little guy with a dart gun traded by the American military. Okay, so you can figure that out, right? Sure you can. So those are our establishment Democrats. When they're overseas, that's the kind of stuff that they're doing. I mean, they bring in people who will do anything for money, is what it comes down to. So where was I going with this? So I'm in all these groups, right? And one at a time they start kicking me out because I say, no, I won't vote for Hillary. So they kicked me out of all the Democratic groups on Facebook. So I decide, well, the only thing I can do is I can make my own group, right? And I made my own group. It was called Hillary Clinton, the scourge of the Democratic Party. And I remember I misspelled scourge. I spelled it S-C-U-R-G or something. And everybody wanted to point that out to me. Spelling Nazis, right? I mean, what can you do? Anyway, I made my own group, and it started to grow. And at first we did court Warren, but, crickets, right? I mean, nothing from her campaign, nothing from any of her supporters even. And all of a sudden I didn't know who Bernie was. At first I mistook him for that gay guy, that old gay guy. What's his name? Well, anyway, he's a senator too, or a congressman. And I hated him, and I was like, oh man, we're not going to take him as our newfound leader, or our follower. I mean, we are the power. Millions of us are the power. We just have to take it. We have to take it from the enemy, right? It may take a century. I don't know how long it's going to take. But Bernard Sanders, who I very quickly found out who he was, and I realized that I'd known who he was for, 20 years. I remember him going to Nicaragua rather than taking the word of these lying pieces of shit in Congress. That they're members of, Bernard becomes members of committees and all kinds of things, and the only information he gets is stuff from the intel community. Well, that's worthless, because they're going to paint things so that they can continue to rape and pillage all these countries, right? So he gets on a plane with I don't know who and goes to Nicaragua, and it's big news, right? And I didn't know who he was, and I didn't really care back then. I had my job to worry about, and, you know, just like all of you. But I was still a progressive way back then, and I took note of some guy going to Nicaragua and actually trying to find out the truth. Probably not really. And I'm not saying I fully support the Sandinistas, although I do think they're a quality movement. But anybody who's corruptible gets corrupted, right? So the current president may be a little bit corrupt now, I mean, but he's still, I mean, he was the man back then. I mean, he stood up. Excuse me. So, where am I going with this again? So yeah, here comes Bernie. And honestly, to this day, I think every decision he's made has been the best. I hate the fact that he has to go out there in, you know, July, August, October, November, December, November, and campaign for a fucking asshole, right? And this guy's a fucking asshole. I wish he'd call me out to go fight him in the parking lot. I'd beat the living shit out of him. Huh? But, you know, Bernie's doing the best he can. I mean, everything he's done has been according to logic. Now, in my heart, and I think even in his heart, he would never support these assholes, these establishment, these donor class assholes. But honestly, I think it's, honestly, I don't think he had a choice. I mean, he couldn't run, he had to run as a Democrat. He has to take back our party to win, for us to win. You know, all we need, and they know that. They all know that. That's why they're willing to do anything, no matter how corrupt and how immoral, to not let him to win. If he were to win for a month, it would change the whole thing. They just cannot give up power. That's why they're doing all the shit that they're doing. Okay, they're just as vicious here in the United States against progressives as they are overseas. I mean, when am I going to step out onto my front yard, you know, and find myself with a dart in the side of my neck? If they're willing to kill a brown person, then how far of a step is it to kill a progressive, right? And I'm not talking about me. Yeah, they could. I mean, they certainly despise me for being who I am when I was supposed to. I was supposed to be working for them, right? My dad did, my mom did, neocons, neoliberals, my parents, 100%, right? I mean, Lebanon, working to defeat the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and leftists everywhere. Saudi Arabia, where my dad helped raise the Mujahideen. I met Osama bin Laden because it was arranged. I was on the plane from New York to Saudi Arabia. I get put in the back section of a 747. Only two people in the back section are me and Osama bin Laden. Alright, he invites me because he lived right down we lived on the same street in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. My dad had been developing this relationship, which you all think of as, obviously horrible, and to an extent I would agree. Throughout our time in Lebanon, he was in charge of building palaces in Saudi Arabia, where he made his connections and made his friends, one of which went on to become king of Saudi Arabia. I forget the names that he used to, when he was talking about what he would do down there. Faisal, King Faisal, Abdulaziz, all these people, they were all buddies of him. I even have pictures of them, together, official pictures, in an unofficial way, right? They were pictures for my dad to have. And I can show them to you anytime you want. And I can show you pictures that he took all around the Middle East, obviously in the capacity of intelligence gathering. Even one in Saudi Arabia, where I asked him, why are you taking a picture of this big factory? And he said, well, because we suspect that Saudi Arabia is developing nuclear weapons at that facility. This isn't something you hear from a guy who's trying to sell sewing machines, right? He worked for Singer. So he worked for Condis, Assam Khashoggi's furniture and interior design and what all, and they were building these factories. And his whole association with the Khashoggis, who I don't have anything against Assam. I mean, he's technically my godfather, and I practically lived with him, I don't know, the first, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 years of my life. I mean, whenever we were moving back and forth, we always lived with them, because we didn't have a place, until we got a place. So anyway, that, and then Singer sewing machines, or actually they produce everything from, refrigerators to guidance systems for multiple re-entry vehicles, right? So they're not really, and they're well known to be one of the thousands of countries around the world, that American companies that are fronts for people in intelligence, like my dad. That's why they picked him up when the furniture factory went down in Beirut. So well, let's get back to Bernie. So, I understand that. I understand that he is doing what he had to do. And in the end, we'll look back on what he's done and say he was like a hypersonic missile. I mean, he moved faster than anybody else could at moving the progressive movement forward. And, you can criticize him all you want for supporting establishment Democrats, but the fact is he didn't have any choice, okay? And people like Jimmy Dore are idiots. They don't understand that. They don't understand. They would rather sacrifice all forward movement in order to validate their theories, right? Okay, so, they kicked me out of all the groups. I formed my own group. We courted Warren, and then we got Sanders, and thank God, right? I mean, yeah, there's better people than Sanders, but, in the meantime, let's just be thankful. AOC all these Rashida Tlaib, none of them would have gotten elected. I mean, if Hillary Clinton had become president, she would have crushed the progressive movement. She would have crushed it into a fine powder and blown it out into the wind. And I hate to say it, but man, Trump was better for progressives, far better, like a million times better, than Hillary Clinton. You know, he even lends us a certain amount of legitimacy. He talks about, you know, Bernie. So, anyway, I've gotten kind of off the subject. Jimmy's been trying to hurt the progressive movement all along. All he does is talk about Tulsi. I'm wondering if he's getting laid. You know, Jimmy, did you get some pussy? Did Tulsi slob your knob or something? I mean, what is it? I mean, all she is some Hindu. She's another soccer mom. I mean, she was stupid enough to join the military, and she talks forever about how she went to fight the enemies of the United States in Iraq. Really? I mean, are you keeping score, Jimmy? You talk about endless wars, you talk about, and yet you like Tulsi Gabbard? A woman who said on your show, because she's just a fucking mouthpiece. She just says whatever she thinks everybody will like. Ooh, I'm a veteran. Ooh, I was stupid enough to join the military and go fight in an illegal war, and then brag about it on your show. On your show, dipshit. You fucking moron. God. Okay. Let's move on.
It is incomprehensible that doctors and nurses throughout this country are forced to put their lives on the line in order to treat patients who are dealing with the coronavirus. The President of the United States must immediately, in the most urgent terms, utilize the Defense Production Act and make certain that we produce all of the gloves, the gowns, and the masks that our medical personnel need. This is a life and death situation, because if our medical personnel go down, who's left to treat the American people? Mr. President, get your act together, utilize the Defense Production Act. Let's make sure we produce what our medical people need.
Well, that certainly makes sense, right? I mean, that's why you gotta love Bernie. I mean, even if you were to try somehow prove that he's made a strategical error, it's clear that his heart, him and I, we share the same heart. I mean, we're for getting shit done, you know. We're for taking care of that guy pushing a cart along the road, the guy standing out on the corner begging for money for food. And we're for what? Accountability. We're for accountability. Every single one of them needs to show us that they're willing to, and it must be so hard for them to support a system that threw them overboard for however many years they've been struggling, right? But they're going to have to, because we're going to take care of them as long as they're not mooching, right? I mean, that's the main thing, mooching. This is where Republicans and Democrats come together. This is where everybody comes together. Nobody wants a 30-year-old guy sitting around shooting heroin and collecting a welfare check. Neither do I. And I want to say something else while I got you here. Look, if you've been following my news, you'll understand this, and I've fully explained it. You can go through my YouTube videos and find it. I don't believe in tearing down anything, not even the mega wealth of Americans. All you're going to do is create so much animosity and so much strife and chaos. We need as little strife and chaos in making this transition that we're trying to make as possible. We can build up the poor into middle class. If they can work, they work. If not, fine. But I'm not for tearing down. Let them, honestly, let them choke on their wealth. Let them choke on it. Let them have it. Let them keep it. We will build new wealth. And I assure you that in 5 or 10 years, poverty will not exist. And the middle class will be stronger than ever. The lower class will be, at best, borderline lower class, but surviving and not having to suffer like they do now and die. They die. I said this morning to somebody, what the neoliberals, the donor class, whether Republican or Democrat, that they're guilty of murder, torture. They're guilty, and I don't think they should get away with that. Let them keep their wealth and choke on it. But I think at some point we're going to have to go after some of the people who have deliberately and openly supported a system that has led to the deaths of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. I don't know. Everything has a paper trail, and it will lead to them. It will lead to them. And, at that point, the guillotine people will get their wish, because some people may end up going to the, that where they do the needles and stuff. I'm not going to say, because it'll be a true justice system. Fair. It'll be fair. Fair and just are the same words. They're synonymous. It's just one has a different connotation than another. So, but I don't believe in wholesale tearing anything down. So, as a matter of fact, I've made it clear that I want to make a deal with the rich where they will be guaranteed their lifestyle in perpetuity for them and their kids and their kids' kids. And let me tell you, that'll be a drop in the bucket when it comes to our economy, because keeping the 0.1 or 1% of people in their trips to Saint Moritz and the French Riviera and a chalet here and a couple of houses here and there, will be a drop in the bucket to buy them off. Because in return, they will be banned from politics, and they will be banned forever from the economic system. And they can't say anything, because it's the same system that's going to give them that lifestyle forever. Now, eventually, if everything works out the way I'm thinking, everybody will be pretty close to having that lifestyle anyway. So they won't be special anymore. They'll just be another group of Americans who are living really well. Wouldn't that be amazing? a classless society because everybody has money. It'll be like that Saturday night skit, where you can go down to the river and you can wish on a fish, and everybody's standing around at the town meeting, and everybody's got king's robes on and golden crowns on their heads and jewelry and everything, and they're all talking about what's wrong with the world, even though they're all like ultra wealthy and have a great life. Well, I think that would be wonderful. And I'm sure some of you noticed my teeth. Well, guess how that happened? That happened by me being the working poor. Yes, I was working when all that happened. I was still doing mobile auto body repair. But at some point I realized it was cheaper to have teeth pulled than to pay for a cap and in 2 or 3 years have to have that tooth pulled anyway. So there was no choice for me. I had to do that. And I can't afford fancy teeth like most of you can, and I can't afford a lot of things that would make me look better. And I've always said I don't give a fucking shit about looks. It's not your looks that matter to me, it's what goes on in here, right? That's what matters to me. And eventually that will be what gets us votes and everything else. So,
The first time I went to Masur Rajavi's rally in Tehran, and I heard he was talking about the freedom and democracy and the equal rights between women and men, and it had a lot of effect on me and a lot of other youth like myself.
قبل از سرنگونی رژیم شاه و روی کار آمدن رژیم اسلامی در ایران، اون زمان ما نسبت به امریکای فضای خوبی تو ذهنمان بود. اما بعداً که بیشتر با این سازمان امریکایی آشنا شدیم و به صورت حرفه‌ای با اون کار کردیم.
Okay, it's important to understand what's going on around the world because of America's position, right?
فهمیدیم که اون واقعیت که تو ذهن ما بود، اون چیزی که ما فکر می‌کردیم در واقع با واقعیت 180 درجه.
زمانی که دانشجو بودم سال 1986 به سازمان مجاهدین پیوستم. البته این به خواسته خودم نبود و به همراه همسرم، با تصمیمی که همسرم اون موقع گرفت و پیکی که از طرف سازمان مجاهدین اومده بود اونجا، من منتقل شدم به سازمان. اون موقع که ما خب بچه‌های ما به دنیا اومدن یا مثلا خانواده بود، میگفتش که شما بخش زیادی از انرژی شما و کلاً کارهای روزمره‌تون معطوف به زندگی خصوصی شده و ما اینو نمیخوایم. یعنی یه انقلابی نباید توجیهش این بود، یه انقلابی نباید انرژیش غیر از بحث مبارزه سطح دیگه باشه.
اونجا رجبی اعلام کرد که من بعد جریانی به نام جریان خانواده و زن و فرزند در درون MEK وجود نداره. گفتن حلقات نداره. من خودم حلقه طلا داشتم. حلقه طلا رو در آوردیم داخل یه کاسه، همه حلقه ها رو جمع کردن و گفتن دیگه به هیچ عنوان کسی حق ازدواج تا زمانی که رژیم ایران سرنگون نشده نداره.
من بچم کوچیک پسرم 6 ماهه بود، شیرخوار، و دخترم 5 ساله که اینا رو جدا کرد سازمان بود. هر کدوم یک کشور.
MEK, they destroy our life, our family, everything. Because they thought that if we don't have that, you know, if they take that away, we will stay with them.
سازمان یک کنترل خیلی سخت شدیدی رو روی افراد انجام میداد و همینطور به طور خاص روی زنان. مسعود رجبی در یک جلسه گفتش که ما میخوایم هر گونه امید به آینده رو از بین ببریم. یا شما تمام عیار با تمام وجود هستید برای سازمان یا نیست. و به دنبال این بود که گفت که خب حالا این شروع کرد به این که یکی از چیزایی که افراد دارن بهش فکر میکنن، خانوما دارن بهش فکر میکنن، این که آینده برن بچه دارشن و دوباره دنبال زندگی. و تو بازدیدایی که شروع شد از زنها به طور گسترده دیدیم که خانوما رو دارن یکی همینطور 20 تا 30 تا مثلا مشاهده شد که اینا دارن میرن روش رو جلوه میکنن. کلا در سازمان مجاهدین برای زنها بالاترین خواسته‌ای که رجبی میخواست ازشون در واقع به عنوان ذوق در رهبر عقیدتی، به عنوان که یکی شدن با رجبی، حرمسرای سازمان یا به اصطلاح حوض مخصوص شورای رهبری اصطلاح کسایی بود یا خانم‌هایی بود که با مسعود رجبی همخوابگی داشتن یا ارتباط جنسی بینشون برقرار شد. به اینا یه دونه گردنبنده که من از گردنبندی که خودم داشتم عکس گرفتم. این گردنبند رجبی مینداخت گردنش. من می‌دیدم اینا وقتی مخالفت می‌کنی باهاشون آخر سر می‌کشنه و وقتی هم کشته شدی شهیدشون میشی.
One of the most important things that I never forget, it was when 9/11 happened. We were in the middle of a very ideological session, cleansing and brainwashing. They put a lot of chocolate, the candy, and every vegetable, everything there, you know, and with the wide screen everywhere. That's whether it was in the middle. And said, today I have the greatest news. And then they show this plane, you know, hitting this Twin Tower over and over and over again. And then everybody, you know, applauding.
در دیدگاه MEK آمریکا به عنوان امپریالیست جهانخوار با عنوان دشمن تمام مردم دنیاست. اینو به صورت آموزش در مغز تک تک ما فرو کرده بودن. در سال 2003 بعد از سقوط رژیم صدام حسین اونجا رجبی گفتش که آقا الان صاحب خونه قبلی ما رفته، صاحب خونه جدید ما آمریکاست، بنابراین ما الان باید با آمریکا رابطه برقرار کنیم.
When I see this American politician talking about MEK and meeting with them and consider them as alternative or freedom fighter, an alternative to Iranian government.
There is a viable opposition to the rule of the Ayatollahs.
I remember and I think of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. We all remember that Al-Qaeda at the time of Russia was created and held by US, CIA, or Bush's family around that. What it comes to my mind is enemy of my enemy is not my friend.
Regime change. Regime change.
Enemy of my enemy is our worst nightmare.
سازمان مجاهدین خانواده رو متلاشی کرده. موقعی که من حتی با خانواده خودم می‌خواستم تماس بگیرم به من گفتن برو تو رو خدا تماس نگیر. اصلا مرد و خاکش کردیم.
Right now, I cannot have a normal relation with my son because he is angry and he told me, Dad, I know you are a good person, you went to fight for freedom and democracy. Okay, but what I don't understand is why you have done that to me. I couldn't have my dad, for my birthday to go to do sport, to come pick me up from school.
وقتی به عقب نگاه میکنم واقعا دنیایی که در آن زندگی میکردم یک جهنم بود. فردی بودم که با ماشین هیچ تفاوتی نداشتم و تماما توسط MEK برنامه‌ریزی میشدم. ما در فرقه در اون MEK در یک مدار بسته بودیم. در عالم مثال ما در یک اتاقی بودیم که هیچ گونه روزنه‌ای به بیرون نداشت.
They took everything that I loved from my heart and my mind.
Okay, so basically, the world isn't as simple as mainstream media makes it. And you're going to have to come to people like me and people like The Intercept. People like me pass on the information. But we pass it on based on what we know about the world, our experiences.
Right as though nobody's watching, because nobody's watching. Suspense is...
Ambulances with patients infected by the coronavirus are arriving at a hotel in Tel Aviv that's been turned into a makeshift quarantine facility. The number of new infections is increasing every day. To fight COVID-19, Israel is now using counter-terrorism technology. Cell phones of quarantined citizens and virus carriers can be tracked by Israel's domestic intelligence agency.
The public understands and the public realizes.
No, the public does not understand. What is the public guilty of here? Huh? What are they doing that's not in their own self-interest? You're a bunch of fucking liars, man. All you're doing is using this situation to test out your new equipment, your fancy new toys, and to test out your ways of controlling everybody and keeping everybody in check. I find it very hard to believe that you're not doing it just to try and track Palestinians who are angry. I've always said, and I still say, listen to these people. Their grievances are legitimate, right? I mean, that's what you don't want to hear. That's what you don't want everybody else to hear. You don't want them to hear that these people are being kicked out of their homes, being kicked off their land. You're creating new refugees every day. And this goes for everybody, from the beast Bashar, the Assad regime in Syria, to all the ones controlled either by the US or by anywhere there's not representative democracy with a constitution, right? I mean, the best thing we have right now is representative democracy, whether it's like you have in Cuba, where the people vote in the people who pick the president, and they pick the president according to the people who voted for them. That's representative democracy. Now you have to have a constitution. You have to protect the vulnerable. So a constitutional representative democracy is the way to go. You don't have it in Israel. You don't have a constitution that protects the Palestinians, or they wouldn't be standing up and fighting with you. They wouldn't be kicked out of their homes. They wouldn't have their land taken away, almost all of it, since 1947, I guess, and going back to the turn of the century, when the Zionists flooded into the country. There's no debate here, man. Jews were less, I believe, than 5% of the people in Palestine. And, I mean, it's no coincidence that this was a British imperialist state. That's how the Zionists took it over. Because Jews and, Europeans didn't like Jews even after World War II, after they'd killed most of them, or a lot of them. I'm not a Holocaust denier. I know that they were killed, along with a lot of other people. But they've never liked them. The Christians. They've never liked them. And Israel was just a way for them to get rid of them. Get them all in one place for the inevitable crisis and downfall. I'm not anti-Semite. I think the Jews and everybody else are all pretty much alike. I don't see that much of a difference between any particular group. They all love their children. They all love themselves. They all love their families. They all love their communities that support their lifestyles and their families, etc. Even the worst people, I guess Republicans, conservatives are the worst people. Even they are guilty of the exact same things as everybody else. They're guilty of maybe being too good at it, right? When you prey on the weakest in support of your interests, that's where most people in the world are at right now. And I understand when it comes down to it, and there's people falling off of a cliff or whatever, and it's a choice between your kids and somebody else's kids. But the real logical response is to support a system that protects everybody, not just your kids, because you and your kids will be next. You'll be next. As we go down the ladder, those will the people. And even if we end up in a situation and some of us only do survive, you're going to be the victims of karma. Trust me. There's no getting away from the way this world really works. And the way this world really works is the worst people will suffer the most. You may live longer, you may see your progeny thrown forth into the future, but in the end you'll all suffer. And I'll tell you what, your children are my children, because my DNA is in everybody else. Everybody else's DNA is in our DNA. It all gets mixed around and it all comes out again. I may or may not ever have children or have children. I don't know. But I know that my DNA and my way of thinking will persist on. As a matter of fact, because I feel like I'm progressive, which means I'm ahead of the curve, I know that it'll manifest itself throughout time. As long as the human race, or whatever race, doesn't really matter what race, goes on. And, hey, this guy, hey, fuck you, dude. Fuck you and all your Nazi friends. You don't fool me with any of this bullshit that's in this. Hey, you're full of shit. You're full of nonsense. Somebody else should be in charge of making sure that, taking care of the people who are. Why are they breaking the rules? Why do you feel like you have to chase them around? I mean, really? You think we're going to buy this idea that they're out there propagating the virus? No. That's bullshit, man. They're bullshit. And this is all propaganda. And I'm not surprised it's German television, because Germany is full of Nazis still.
Luis Ricardo Guerrero has been shining shoes on Bogota streets for 38 years. He usually made about $8 to $10 a day, but not during the pandemic. Ricardo Guerrero has been shining shoes on Bogota streets for 38 years. He usually made about $8 to $10 a day, but not during the pandemic.
This morning I've only shined one shoe, and I'll keep waiting until about 2 p.m., while before I would have shined 10 shoes by 10 a.m., so I have seen a huge drop.
In 2018, officials registered more than 20,000 street vendors in the Colombian capital. They are people like Luis Ricardo, whose income requires daily contact with their customers. With coronavirus measures that call for self-isolation, street vendors have been adapting. Jonathan Moreno was selling newspapers just a week ago when he realized he would make more money selling hand sanitizer, which was quickly selling out in the stores.
We are trying to find a way to get more gel to last the next 3 to 4 months, in case these quarantines continue, and then to be able to go out and look for work again.
Bogota is preparing for even more extreme measures to stop the spread of COVID-19. Friday, the Colombian capital began a 4-day shutdown drill in anticipation of what may soon become a reality. While the Colombian government evaluates health policies to protect people from disease, a prolonged quarantine will mean the government will also have to find ways to protect the economy. Michelle Vegas, CGTN, Bogota, Colombia.
We were just attacked. That's right, about 4 a.m., the printing press of our Hong Kong edition was visited.
So Jason Schreier, is that his name? He is from Kotaku. Great website. I used to read it all the time when I was really covering games. Holy shit. Video game retailer GameStop just sent a memo to all its staff telling them to keep their stores open, even during state lockdowns, and to tell law enforcement that it's okay because they're essential retail. Unbelievable! This is unbelievable. And this is only because GameStop right now is teetering on the edge of the end. I mean, look, personally, I haven't bought a physical copy of a game probably in 2 years. I download my games. It saves space. Saves space in the apartment. So I'm not going to buy physical copies. But that's what they realize that. So this is their only hope right now, is to keep the store open. Hope that people are still going there buying games. But this is ridiculous. Let's read the story. The struggling video game retail chain GameStop told all of its stores this afternoon to stay open even in the event of state or city lockdowns to protect against the COVID-19 pandemic, emphasizing that it is essential retail alongside groceries and pharmacies and should therefore be exempt from enforced closures. Essential retail. How do you possibly defend that? Due to the products we carry that enable and enhance our customers' experience in working from home, we believe GameStop is classified as essential retail and therefore is able to remain open during this time, the retailer said in a memo to staff this afternoon. Wow. Wow. How the fuck do they justify this? It's clear they just don't want to lose money. It's obvious, and they're trying. I mean, you could say bars are essential because people need places to go to socialize. Like, it's just, you can make excuse for any place that's open right now that is essential using their logic. But clearly their logic is completely absurd. More here. We have received reports of local authorities visiting stores in an attempt to enforce closure despite our classification. Store managers are approved to provide the document linked below to enforcement as needed. The document in question encourages police officers to call GameStop's corporate headquarters if they have a problem with the policy. Wow. Wow. The retailer said later this afternoon that it would be reducing hours, postponing all events, and suspending used game trade-ins until March 29th. This shit's not over March 29th. They're just giving it a week. Oh my goodness. GameStop here. We are working diligently during this unprecedented time to provide our customers and associates with the safest environment possible. Please see below for details on new changes we are enacting, and click here for a full statement. Wow. Wow. Meanwhile, GameStop employees all across the U.S. have feared for their safety, of course, in the wake of the company's misguided response to the COVID-19 crisis. Been with the company almost a decade. One told Kotaku this afternoon, this is indefensible. Clearly indefensible. That it's crazy. This company is just garbage. Garbage. What do they say here? Instituting multiple social... Okay, so this is their specific actions we have taken include... I can barely read this from my screen. Instituting multiple social distancing practices in our stores, such as only allowing 10 customers in our stores at any given time. I have walked by... So we have EB Games in Canada, not GameStop, but I have walked by EB Games many times, walking around the mall or wherever. I have never seen 10 people even in the store. Like, this is wishful thinking here, that there's even 10 people in the store. But going on here, following CDC recommended guidelines to adopt in-store line management practices that creates a 6-foot parameter between customers and checkout lines, reducing our store hours of operation to from 12 to 8 p.m., which will be in place until Sunday. Again, this shit ain't over on the 29th. Their timeline here is hilarious. Rolling out delivery at door service to allow customers to pick up their purchase at the front door of our U.S. store locations. Hold up. Wait, what? Rolling out delivery at door. So this is not delivering to your door. This is delivery to the front of the GameStop, where they gotta walk 6 feet. What? What? What does that even mean? You have the cashier come out from behind the desk and just walk to the front of the store and hand the game. Like, you walk to the front of the GameStop and say, "Hey, I'm not gonna walk in, but I ordered a game. Can you walk over, please?" Wow. They are trying everything they can. Every excuse possible. We took all the steps necessary. We can stay open. We're doing fine. Crazy. Suspending temporarily our video game and consumer electronics trading practices until Sunday, March 29th. Again, hilarious date here. Postponing all gaming events and midnight launch activities until further notice. Well, thank you. At least they did that. I'm sure people are lining up for, or they would be lining up right now for Animal Crossing. That's out tomorrow, right? I'm going to pick that up. I feel like it's the kind of game that we need right now. A nice happy game where I can, I don't know, pull weeds. Postponing all gaming events. Disabling temporarily all interactive gaming stations in our stores. Good. But how about closing the store? Are you doing that? Encouraging customers to leverage our online e-commerce capabilities. Wow, like we're in the year 2003. Please leverage our online e-commerce capabilities and direct deliveries to their homes from our warehouses or stores. Oh, really? You have online capabilities, e-commerce capabilities. My God, this is why they still exist. They're living in a world where it's still 2003. This is really sad. So don't go to GameStop. How about that? Don't do that.
Unless maybe you want to get sick and die, right? Oh, man. You know, the cray carries on. There's no end to it, right? I mean, every time I get on, obviously I'm accessing the Rational National, but you know, a lot of the other stuff that you've seen has been from like DW News, Turkish news, Chinese news, just all kinds of stuff. But I know how to find it, you know. I know how to sift through it and find the stuff. But yeah, Rational National, they're David, he's the best. He really is. I mean, Mike Figueredo gives him a close run for his money, you know, for the money, but David's got it going on.
As Mexico takes major steps to contain the spread of the coronavirus, people continue to move about Mexico's largest city, as they did before the crisis. Many are in line at government offices to process paperwork. Large numbers of city workers in the capital are still on the job. Some tell CGTN they're not too worried about becoming ill.
I'm going to die one day. I'm not sure from what or when. I'm doing what I can to take care of myself. I use alcohol and disinfectant where I live. But life will end one day. We have to live the best way possible.
Really? Really? Is that a really wise philosophy? You know, I'm going to die someday, so taking immense risks now is logical. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Mexico City officials have ordered workers to sanitize underground metro trains several times each day. Still, hundreds of thousands of people continue to use the metro here, despite warnings that people should not congregate in large numbers. The country is preparing.
Oh my God. You know, no wonder we're closing the border. Let's just see. Well, it's kind of hard to do because I do not see another shortcut for. And I cannot move this out of the way. There we go. It would drop down. So like, let's bring up this and go to this. I wish it had curves for over time. Obviously China's still the worst. Or no, Italy is. Why don't they put the... Oh, because they're doing overall numbers. Okay, so where is Mexico now? Well, I don't know. Did we pass it? Anyway, as usual, far more impressive are my numbers. So I say Italy, you know, we're hoping for this curve which goes way up here. I say in a week or two, Mexico's gonna be a fucking disaster, man. Their curve is gonna like skyrocket. I mean, all those people in the subways, I'll bet you Mexico City has people dropping dead like you can't imagine. I can't even watch this stuff. Let's move on.
Daria Gabai's music school has been shut for over a week because of concerns about COVID-19. To keep her students up to date, she's teaching all her lessons from home over the internet.
I would very much prefer, and I'm used to have, physical contact with my students, being able to touch their hands, being able to show them, being able to have them feel what I feel.
And does she honestly believe that people are going to pay her the same amount of money for these online? I mean, I guess there's some suckers out there, but right. I mean, if you've ever studied an instrument, the interpersonal part of the teaching is, I mean, I'm not going to pay for somebody to sit there behind a camera and give me lessons what I'd pay them to be there and like move my hands. Like if I was teaching them guitar, you actually, when you see them doing it the wrong way, you actually reach over and put their fingers in the right place. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to do a lot of things, and to improve an online lesson to the point where it actually competes with the person-to-person lesson, it's going to take a long time to figure it out.
It's better than nothing, so I think that, we're still blessed.
Daria is using the video conferencing website Zoom, and she's not the only one. Earlier this week, Zoom Cloud Meetings became the most downloaded app in the US, as the increase in home working has led to a boom for video call services like Skype and FaceTime. App-based grocery delivery firm Instacart has seen the highest demand in its history, and more than 25% of its customers last week used a new feature which allows them to have deliveries left outside their door. But a sudden increase in business can also have a downside.
Both Netflix and YouTube are reducing streaming quality in Europe for a month, as huge numbers of families stuck in isolation turn to streaming services for entertainment.
There have also been delays in Amazon deliveries, and the companies having to prioritize household and medical.
But not in the United States, right? The price of empire, Europe, the price of empire. I mean, our empire isn't just, beating little countries to death and stealing all the oil, because, our oil just happens to be under their country. It now goes to an economic empire where Americans are being placated in every way, while Europeans, well, you're just not, I mean, you should have built your own, infrastructure instead of letting ITT, International Telephone and Telegraph, an American company, which, by the way, is another company that fronts for the CIA and Intel. How do I know? Well, my father was working for Singer Sewing Machines, right? I already explained that to you. And we were staying in the Holiday Inn Hotel, which I could show you pictures of it. It's still a ruin, because eventually karma took its chunk, its piece of flesh from them. My father was in the Starco building, which was a block away, and he was at work, and I was out by the pool. This was the same day that they stopped letting people sit by the pool because bullets were whizzing around. And all of a sudden, his building explodes. And it didn't come down, but as my dad pointed out, it broke a 2-inch thick glass door that was on the Singer, glass door into the Singer offices, and all this glass comes flying out of the building, just the whole side of the building facing me. All the glass in the building came, you could hear it, you could see it and you could hear it. And of course I'm 12, 13 years old or something. No, I'm more like 14. This was in 75, so I was 14. And I'm sitting there thinking, Dad? What about Dad? And I turn around and I see him walking out of the lobby of the Holiday Inn Hotel with his briefcase and dressed in his suit like he always was for work. And I'm like, holy shit. So the question you have to ask, how did you think he really just happened to walk out of the building just before it exploded? No. So what was the reason for that? Well, AT&T was on the roof of the same building he was in, 10th or 12th floor or whatever, and they had massive telecommunications, all kinds of big satellite dishes and stuff. And hold on, I want to make sure I can hear this. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you what I think because I know I'm right. They needed to blow up all of that stuff, not only so that whoever ended up with it, Amal probably would have ended up with it. They were operating in the hotel district and disrupting everything and trying to take it for obvious reasons, right? All the big buildings, all the telecommunications on top of the Starco building, all those. So my dad's ex-military, right? He's as high as you can go as a non-commissioned officer, sergeant, million stripes down his arm. Handled nuclear weapons, had top secret clearance in the military. I'm sure that he worked with Marines from the U.S. Embassy or whoever, and they blew it up. First of all, none of the militias, even the Christian militias or any of the people operating, had plastic explosives. People were using dynamite, gas canisters strapped with dynamite. That's how they were blowing each other up. In case you don't know, Lebanon was a horrible civil war. People pulling people out of cars and cutting their throats, stop points. All kinds of stuff was happening while I was there. people coming from other neighborhoods and threatening everybody. You know, I watched this from the balcony of my friend's house. People could still move freely, so the Palestinians could come right up to the edge of Babda, where I was, and make a fuss and possibly start a little war right there. And they did, and it happened several times. And I saw it, okay? And I saw a lot of other things. We had rockets falling all around us, and all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't believe. And I saw people blown up. I went down with my friends whose balcony I was on that day. Well, first, our parents told us, look, try and get some bread. So we went to the Babda bakery, and it was shut down. Drove down into Hazmia, which is below us. When we got there, we were going to get into this line for bread, right, at this bakery. But I guess Hezbollah, which didn't exist yet, but they existed, nobody knew who they were or what they were called, and I guess they'd already targeted it, and they were firing mortars into the line. And people, when I got down there were people, immediately people started running in every direction, and explosions, and a fire, and I think some of the fire was from people burning, the Christians burning tires to keep anybody who would try to race through, to fight them from using the road. Where was I? Okay, so anyway, you understand. The way I am is, what these eyes have seen over the years. I'm a direct result of that, physically and mentally to a certain extent, probably scarred for life, only to come home and find a country where the same people who created all these situations around the world, what I saw, were in control of my country, and ever more tightening that fist on its people through propaganda, through the mainstream media, etc. So let's see if I can get back to what I was talking about.
But it is hiring 100,000 new employees to meet online shopping demand and increasing staff pay. Nobody knows how long the current situation will continue, but experts believe technology companies can translate their sudden popularity into more long-term success.
Black swan events, such as economic recessions and pandemics, they purely change the trajectory of governments, economies, and businesses. And if you look at the start of the pandemic in 2002 to 2004, which basically catalyzed the growth of what then was a small e-commerce company called Alibaba, it helped establish it as kind of a forefront of retail. And that was directly fueled by underlying anxiety around travel and human contact.
While brick-and-mortar companies are suffering in the current outbreak, there's an opportunity for some tech firms to deeply embed themselves into the economy and change the business landscape for the future. Sarah Walton, CGTN, New York.
The threat of the coronavirus can...
Yes. So the person hoping that online is going to help them. I doubt it. I mean, it may keep them alive for a little while, it may keep their businesses alive for a while, but I'm willing to bet that face-to-face contact won't be replaced anytime soon. On the other hand, I strongly support online alternatives and developing them. Maybe this will force people to develop online ways. I hope.
Continues to shut down city centres around the world. One of the most recent is Buenos Aires. Argentina went into full lockdown on Friday, which will last through to at least the end of the month. People are allowed out only for essential items such as food and medicine, and certain services and industries will continue to.
So I'd say that where there's been more deaths, actual deaths, and that those deaths were among the middle and upper class, people have reacted quickly. And this, going back to what I said about Mexico, they obviously haven't got it yet. So in 2 weeks, I think they will massively spread this virus. And of course, their hope that they could continue life as usual, keep their subways running. Those will be ghost towns. So everything that they thought they could do to keep that from happening will actually have to be done. I mean, they'll have to do, they'll be just like Buenos Aires and multiple other cities that have already shut down.
Too. But hotels like this one in downtown Buenos Aires have been ordered to close. The 12 employees here are unsure when they will work again. President Alberto Fernandez said the country needed to act early in the face of the COVID-19 threat.
It is time to understand that we are caring for the health of Argentines.
Fernandez acknowledged the national quarantine will hurt the economy. The country is in recession and already faced difficult debt renegotiations this year. On Friday, IMF Director Kristalina Georgieva stated Argentina.
So this guy doesn't look like the Bolsonaros. I forget who was in charge of. And I think that you will see, already you've seen a resurgence in socialist style, the pink wave that put a lot of people like Evo Morales and those in power. And yes, I think that we will see blood in the streets in these countries, these American colonies, these imperialist colonies of Europe and the United States.
Argentina will need, quote, substantial debt relief. Economy Minister Martin Guzman held a conference on.
And of course, anything to do with the Monetary Fund and the World Bank and all that is just the causes, and these are just the symptoms. I mean, these countries need to do like Venezuela and Cuba and break off their relationships with anything but themselves. They need to become independent. I heard the Ayatollah of Iran talking about how the United States had basically done them a favor by forcing them to be more independent, And I think that's true. I think that's true. I think they have. Oh. Letting all the cold air out of my refrigerator.
So I have an awesome video.
So commercials on YouTube are just, a perfect example of how the MSM is forced upon us. So they force their advertisers upon us. There's very little we can do about it. You could download software that will block ads, but guess what? They're being forced upon you too, right? I mean, no matter how you look at it, it's being forced upon us.
Here that I think you're going to appreciate. Bernie was asked yesterday in D.C. if he'll drop out because, you know, he didn't do too well in the previous election. And so now pressure is mounting among establishment types. They're, you know, basically hinting like, come on, bro, get out. What are you doing? And Bernie was fed up, and here's what happened.
So what do you say to your supporters and all this flurry today? Can you say to you?
Nora Simpson is a mother to 2 boys.
Okay, we already know all about Bernie and his problems, you know, so move
A
on.
4-year-old and a 3-year-old. Over the past few weeks, they've been asking a lot of questions about the coronavirus.
In the beginning, the questions were, you know, can the virus kill me? Now my 4-year-old says things like, we're washing our hands for coronavirus. And I say, yeah, we are. That's exactly right, Rafa. We've got to do what we can to protect ourselves and protect our neighbors.
Rafa and Rocky and millions of kids around the world are getting a crash course in coronaviruses right now, whether their parents like it or not.
With schools closing in New York City and life as we know it virtually coming to a standstill, it's impossible not to talk about the coronavirus with your children, but experts say it should be done responsibly.
Okay, so
Darby Fox says the
I think we've kind of beat this horse to death, right?
As all of us know, we are facing an extraordinary and unprecedented crisis in our country and around the world. We are looking at a global healthcare crisis as the coronavirus spreads.
And yeah, we know about that too.
I meet Dr. Brown at the National Institutes of Health, just outside of Washington, D.C. It's one of the world's foremost medical research centers. Dr. Brown is the director of the Office of Emergency Care Research at NIH. He earned his medical degrees from London's University College Hospital Medical School. He's worked in emergency medicine for more than 20 years, both Boston and Washington, D.C. Dr. Brown has written more than 30 peer-reviewed articles and 3 books, including Influenza, the 100-year hunt to cure the deadliest disease in history. It explores the complexity of the flu virus, beginning with the deadly global flu outbreak of 1918. What about 1918? Describe for us what it was like, because this influenza outbreak, I mean, it almost brought society to its knees in many respects, didn't it?
Sure. So this is really what got me involved with writing the book, is this anniversary, this 100th anniversary of the 1918 epidemic. So just to paint the big picture, somewhere between 50 and 100 million people died worldwide from influenza from early January, from early 1918 through to the January, February of 1919. 50 to 100 million people. In the United States, somewhere around 600,000 people died. In today's numbers, that would be over 3 million deaths in the US alone from influenza. In Great Britain, 250,000 people. Again, in today's numbers, much, much higher than that. This epidemic spread to essentially every place on Earth. And I think one of the most chilling aspects of the influenza outbreak of 1918 was, of course, the realization that nobody knew what was killing them. They had no identification of what this bug was. People called it influenza, but they didn't know what it was, how it was transmitted. They had some ideas, but really, modern medicine was really in its infancy even 100 years ago. And the disease would come on very, very quickly. It uncharacteristically targeted young, healthy adults. Most infectious diseases are worse or more severe for people who are elderly or very young, because they have either an immature immune system if you're very young, or an immature system or an immune system, if you like, that's kind of tired when you're very old. But usually the people in the middle, the young, healthy adults, they're usually the most resilient to infectious diseases. This influenza virus of 1918, it seemed to have a target on this young adult population, and they were actually at higher risk than the typical populations. And so the disease of 1918, the influenza of 1918, killed young adults in far higher numbers than you would have suspected. And and it decimated towns and villages, factories closed. Of course, it was it came at the tail end of the Great War of 1914-18, so the disease was transmitted at very, very high rates in the army camps that were both on the continental United States and in France and Europe. People were in very great proximity to each other, so the disease was coughed and sneezed over each other, and so the disease spread very rapidly among the soldiers and recruits of 1918. And as I said, when it was all said and done, somewhere in the region of 600,000 people in the US, 3 million in today's numbers, were dead, and they still didn't know what it was that had killed them. And there was no treatment. Back in those days, there were no antibiotics. And so if you came down with a complication of the flu, like pneumonia, it would kill you. And it has actually been suggested that it wasn't the flu itself that was causing all these casualties and fatalities, but actually what most people were dying of with the complications of flu were these bacterial secondary infections in the lungs that all doctors could do was stand around and watch and wait. That was all that they could do. So you had this disease that was wiping out the young, healthy population, and people didn't know what it was called, and they had no cure for it. They had some suggestions, and we can perhaps talk about those. They had some things that they would try, but nothing that we would today consider to be anything like effective medications.
Viruses like COVID-19 can evolve in a gradual way through mutations, which means someone previously protected against one strain can effectively fight the mutated virus and they become sick.
So the changing of the raincoat, that mutating, that's the scary piece of it, isn't it?
That's right, and it makes the flu vaccine business very, very challenging. So what scientists always try and do is they take a bit of the flu virus that the body will recognize, and they inject those few proteins into the body mounts a response.
Okay, so basically what I've heard all my life is that these, because they have a very short life, right? Viruses have a very short life. Bacteria, the bigger you get, the longer they live. So they're always going to be able to mutate. So no matter what kind of vaccines they come up with, the new one will be even deadlier. And this is SARS-1, SARS-2. We're in SARS-2 now. That's the pretty much the legitimate name of it. And just yesterday I told my next door neighbor, they're Nepalese and immigrants, and they work in the hospitals here. And when they first moved in next to us in like 2016, they brought SARS-1, gave it to my mother because she liked their little girl a lot and spent way too, even though it was obvious that they were sick, right? And they even told us, we're sick, we've got these, and now the little girl's got it and the mother had it and everybody's got it. And my mom comes down with it. Nobody else that she knew was sick, either before or after. So there's no doubt where we got it. They knew where we got it. But, let me talk a little bit about human nature. People will lie to protect their reputation. And I'll even let you listen to my conversation with him yesterday. Hang on. Okay, so I go out jogging yesterday, and I run across our neighbor. And here's the first conversation as I pass him on my way to go jogging, and then there's the one when I came back.
You remember when you first moved here, right? When you first moved here, you gave my mom that virus and she got really sick. And then I caught it off of her. So you need to be very careful to stay out of contact with her. Okay, good. But out here, when she's walking, just kind of stay away from her. Because I wouldn't want you to get her sick again.
Okay, so basically I'm amazed. These are people who are supposed to be your friends. They're our neighbors. We've never been anything but nice to them. And he says, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. He knows what I'm talking about. The first couple of months they lived here, it was a part of our lives. It was just basically a, well understood fact that they had passed this SARS-1 on to my mother. And I was here taking care of her. And of course I caught it. In a way, it's a composite kind of story about the virus that's going around now, SARS-2. And, as nice as I am, I wanted to, what I'd really like to say to him is, hey man, I know you're working in the hospital. I know you and your wife are both working in the hospital. You pass this along to my mother, and she dies, and we're going to have a serious problem, buddy. You know what I mean? So, or onto her and then onto me. What if I die? Wipe out an entire bloodline in one fell swoop. It almost makes you think of conspiracies and stuff, right? Going back to the Indians and purposely infected blankets. Like I say, cray, crazy.
It's against the vaccine, and then it's ready when the real flu strikes. The problem is that those proteins can change, and as you said, it's a bit like this overcoat. You've taught the body to recognize a brown overcoat, but now the person is wearing a black overcoat, and the body doesn't recognize that as an intruder. What scientists are trying to do is to manufacture a vaccine against a part of the flu virus that remains constant. That would give us what's called a universal flu vaccine. So although the overcoat changes a lot, there may be parts of the flu vaccine that are conserved from year to year and from strain to strain. And if we can make a vaccine against those conserved parts of the virus,
then we will make billions of dollars and I'll be like a super rich doctor. I worked in a cancer lab. That was my first job when I was 16 years old. And let me tell you something, there's nothing that requires intelligence or education to work in these labs and to develop these vaccines. Where I was working, and I was just cleaning glassware, but of course I became intimately familiar with the process. You take a rat, you stick them under a hood, and you cut their belly open, and you pull their liver out, something that anybody can show you to do instantly, and you can do it over and over again from then on. And the people who do it, there's no getting around ineptitude. We're all inept at times. One girl they take their instruments, there's a number of them, and they dip them in alcohol, and then they pull them out and work on the rat. And I forget if they had a torch going for lighting the instruments on fire for a second or what, but she pulled them out all dripping wet with alcohol and dripped them all over her rat, and then accidentally caught them all on fire. So there's this burning rat under this hood, and fortunately the hood's there to suck up all the smoke and everything, because we would have all been dying, right, of the smell. Every new person that came in had to kill a rat. And how did they do it? I guess to keep the liver from being contaminated, you would pull the rat out by its tail, and while it was going, like, you would take a handle of a screwdriver and whack the rat real hard in the head, and this would keep them stunned until you could get them in this guillotine thing and press down on the handle and cut their head off. That's how they came up with the rats, right? The dead rats. There were always lots of pink-eyed rats in the facility, in the lab. And then you would take their livers and put them in a centrifuge and stir them all up until they were separated cells. You'd take those and you would put them in a petri dish with the solution. And then you would introduce the carcinogen. And in a week or two you would look at it under a microscope and it would either have mutated or not mutated. That's how you classify carcinogens. It's not magic. It's not difficult. Science generally isn't, because it follows certain rules. I know you're waiting for me to tell you about the, magical, mystical world of science. Well, guess what? In 2 weeks, I could have you in any one of these labs, because they do the same thing over and over and over to achieve their results. And you could learn how to do it, and you could get paid $50,000, $100,000 a year to do it. Let me tell you what really happens. The communities, the Stanford research where I was, they go out and they find people in their communities who are their friends. And those people run the staffing and everything. And they pick from among their friends. Okay? That's how it works in reality. It doesn't matter whether you have a PhD in this or that, or a master's or anything like that. I was a 16-year-old high school student, and I could have been running the lab probably better than whoever was running it within a couple of weeks, a month. There wasn't that much to learn. There wasn't that much to know. And you'd be doing the same thing over and over again every day after the first day. You just get better at it. And people like me who have novel solutions for simple problems and complicated problems would naturally move ahead. So, just dispelling that.
Able to come into the homes to help disinfect, help keep up with it, be a layer of cleaning that needs to happen in these homes right now.
Everyone out for themselves. Rats leaving a sinking ship. If you're in your home and you don't have the virus, no amount of cleaning is going to help you. If anything, you risk bringing it into the home.
So Lit Mobile just sent me this solar wireless battery pack. I'm excited. Let's see what's inside.
Let's not.
In the last 48 hours, nearly 1,000 people have died in Lombardy alone. The hospitals are overrun with the sick and overwhelmed
my heart goes out to you, Italy and Lombardy. This is a horror. Let's hope that the rest of the world can learn from this. Idiots like Mexico who still have subways full of people, and you know they're infected, and you know they're passing along the virus, and you know it's going to explode. You know, don't wait till that happens. Do it now. Do it yesterday. Do it 2 weeks ago. Do it 2 months ago. Do it in December. Wuhan should have done it in December. They waited till, I don't know, January, late January, February to do it. Could have stopped it right there. The Chinese are probably the smartest, which doesn't give me much hope. As smart as they are, they didn't make the right decisions.
Last hour announcing dozens of new confirmed infections. This just one day after putting in place its new stay-at-home measures. Health officials there in Los Angeles County saying 10% of people testing have been confirmed as positive. We should note, however, not everyone is being tested. Of course, that's something that's happening differently in different countries. Only those with considerable symptoms are getting tested. Also, in the last few hours, New York's governor ordering all non-essential workers, all workers in non-essential business.
The vast majority of people with this virus are showing no symptoms. They show symptoms 2 weeks later. Okay? Obviously the vast majority, because if you look at the people who get sick 2 weeks later, they had it 2 weeks earlier. If we had been testing and quarantining these people, this wouldn't be happening. Everybody knows this, and yet they wait. And this pandemic will circle the world several times. If we slow it down now, all it's going to do is resurge. We have to stop it. We have to stop it. We can't slow it down. All that will do is, in flu season next year, in November, October, November, December, it'll explode again. We have to stop it. And you know, everybody seems to, because of the capitalist system, and everybody wants to pay their bills. Well, guess what? Figure out another way to pay your bills. If you have to sit out on the sidewalks for 2 weeks, stay away from people. Stay away. We have to stop this virus, not slow it down. Otherwise it'll come back again and again and again. Stay in your homes. We will help you. We will force the U.S. government to deliver you what you need to survive, because that's all it's going to be. That's all we're going to have. Hopefully we will have that. You know, eggs, milk, crackers, whatever, to survive. But in the long run, you're not going to survive if you let this thing go on and on and on. It has to be stopped. It can't come back if it stops. But if one person out there, because this started with one person, I assume, or 10 or something, I don't know. But if there's one person running around, you'll hear about this. And do we want to go through this every 9 months? Do we really want to? Rather than just dealing with it now? I mean, the United States will have to isolate itself for 100 years. We'll have to close our borders every time one person comes down with it somewhere out there. It's got to be isolated. It's got to be stopped.
Fox News coverage of the coronavirus has been terrible, which is unsurprising, but they recently did a complete 180 and they're contradicting themselves at record speed.
This is yet another attempt to impeach the president. And sadly, it seems they care very little for any of the destruction they are leaving in their wake. We must test for the virus in order to stop the spread of it. What could be a very great recession. Some predicting even a depression.
At worst case scenario, it could be the flu.
I feel like the more I learn about this, the less there is to worry about.
I was about to say the same thing. We don't have immunity to this virus. It's a new virus. It's a pandemic strain of a virus we haven't seen before.
All the talk about coronavirus being so much more deadly doesn't reflect reality. Without a vaccine, the flu would be far more deadly. We're facing an incredibly contagious and dangerous virus that is moving across the world from one hotspot to another.
We're going to call out anyone and everyone who's using this virus as a political weapon against the president. The standard flu every single year kills tens of thousands of Americans. We are now entering what will be the crucial defining 15-day period as it relates to this virus, where we must slow the spread of coronavirus.
It's actually the safest time to fly. Everyone I know that's flying right now, terminals are pretty much dead. We have a responsibility to slow down this virus and to think of other people during this time. And so if you can keep your distance and prevent someone from getting close to you that might be sick, you can save your family, you can save the elderly, and help our country as a nation. It is absolutely disgusting that Democrats are seeking to use this complex virus to score cheap political points. This dangerous health crisis could dovetail quickly into a political crisis, already feeling economic ramifications of it all.
So you're probably wondering, well, how the hell, like, why, how did this happen? What are they doing?
No, I'm really not wondering at all. Why does nothing that the lamestream media, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, not surprise me? I mean, look at me. I'm sitting here, and aside from all the health problems I've always had because of this shitty system that we have, I don't have the virus, and neither does my mother. And why? Because I've always stockpiled for an emergency, and when it started, yes, I ran out there, and you can call it panic buying. I just made sure that we had a lot of bread and milk and eggs, and I ran up a bill. But I'm sitting here and I'm trying desperately to make sure my mom doesn't catch it by being stupid. We both can't stand being indoors 24/7, so we both go out. I maintain a massive distance between me and anybody else. We talk from 20, 30 feet most of the time. If I pass them, I continue passing them until I'm past them. Maintaining at least a 6 foot, maybe 9 foot distance. So that's why I'm not sick. Now, why hasn't everybody done that for a month at least? I've been doing that. You know, even when I went to the store at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, when I got up to because it was self-scan, you couldn't get anybody to check you out. I maintained a distance, and when I found people crowding in behind me, I backed out and I said, look, I don't feel comfortable with all these people around me. And the guy came over with a wand and put all my stuff into the computer so that I could just roll through and use my credit card. Of course, I get out to the truck. I was borrowing, and I douse my hands, and I douse my keys, and I run my hands all over anything that I'd touched. People, you all need to learn how to do this. You need. And then I come home, I pull everything out of the truck in the garage, and which is a tiny garage, but I'm not going to get into that. and douse it with the same. It's about half chlorine, half this really nasty, like you use in to scrub your tiles. It was actually the Myers brand. I combined it, and it fizzled. I mean, I had to avoid the fumes, but I wanted something that I could count on. So here I am, perfectly healthy, aside from the, American epidemic, which is that of shitty food, shitty water, water with pesticides and mining contaminants and all that kind of stuff. Well, actually, I don't drink that. I will say thank you to food stamps for enabling me to buy reverse osmosis water all along, and a filtration system which I paid for myself, which will in the end probably be our last ditch water supply. So Fox News, and a bunch of motherfuckers, man. You don't give a shit about anybody. You really don't. All you give a shit about is holding on to your MSM power, mainstream media power, that is part of, a mouthpiece for the ultra rich and all the sycophants underneath you, the millions of Americans who fall for their bullshit, their nonsense. It wouldn't bother me in the least if the upper class who are responsible for all this, not the ones who aren't. I'm not going to condemn other people, but it wouldn't bother me in the least if they got thrown under the bus, just like the people who they're organizing to be thrown under the bus every day, right? Every day for the last 100, 200 years, right? I mean, this started out as a small thing, but they organized it as the world got smaller, as America got smaller. And I don't mean smaller physically, I mean smaller in an economic and political ways. They organized to keep it safe for themselves at the expense of everybody else. So I really wouldn't mind seeing them get thrown under the bus for the rest of us. A Festivus for the rest of us. I would rather not. I would rather you make my deal with them, let them have what they want. I would rather a bloodless coup. But honestly, the way people work, I don't see that happening.
They are Trump sycophants. They take their cues from the White House. So when Trump's out there saying,
The streets of Wuhan, China were quiet during the coronavirus outbreak as the city was under lockdown. Scientists believe the source of the infection was a wild animal, narrowing the search down to a bat.
Actually, it's not down to a bat. They're thinking this little armadillo thing. I think we'll see it in a later segment.
When it comes to bats, these mammals have a history of passing potentially deadly pathogens on to humans.
That comes from Ebola, where they believe that this one huge bat cave that humans were going in and collecting guano, which is bat shit. And they believe Ebola came out of there. It continues to come out of many places, I think.
The 2002 outbreak of SARS and the 2013 to 2016 Ebola epidemic are both linked to bats. But enough.
This is just plain shitty reporting. They don't know anything about it. And this is going to be about the dengue fever and mosquitoes, and then they're going to talk about mosquitoes that are genetically designed to have, well, they're, the little worms that they breed that become mosquitoes die before they become full-size mosquitoes. Will this stop mosquitoes? Do we want to stop mosquitoes? How do we know that this might not be such a disruption to the food chain that it might be worse than dengue fever? One of the many questions I'd like answered.
And now it's time for news from around the world. And meanwhile, in Gabon, a haven for a number of different primate species, including gorillas and chimpanzees. They don't want you going anywhere near them because you're sick. And I think understandably their position. The Central African nation has only one confirmed COVID-19 case so far, but fears linger after an Ebola epidemic back in 1995 wiped out more than 90% of the gorillas in the northern part of the country. A devastating legacy that they obviously don't want to resume. And the director of operations for one of the national agencies for parks there said, "We've decided to close tourist activities for viewing the great apes in our parks to avoid any risk of transmissions between humans and the animals. The respiratory viruses that affect humans are easily transmitted to great apes because the two species are so closely related." And so I had not even thought about that. One of the reasons we're including this story today is because you probably too had not thought about that. We've, asked questions about whether our pets can get this and this sort of thing. But some animal species are very vulnerable for it and obviously would not receive the same sort of medical care if they got it. And so a temporary shutdown of tourist activity until the nationwide, or the international situation around this is probably not a bad idea. But in that country, gorillas, chimpanzees are not the only animals that views are changing towards. Pangolins were once prized items in the markets of Gabon's capital, Libreville, but bushmeat sellers have started hiding the small, scaly mammals behind boar legs and porcupine carcasses. So understand the context of this. They were considered the most trafficked animal in the world up until very recently, possibly still. But because of the links, either in reality or in belief, between these little creatures, which are, I think we can agree, absolutely adorable, and COVID-19, suddenly people's minds are changing on that. Trading the endangered animal, considered to be the most poached in the world, is illegal in the country now, but that's not why the merchants are hiding their stocks. A team of Chinese researchers suspect that they are the ones who transmitted the novel coronavirus to humans at another game market in the city of Wuhan. And so, look, you've probably heard about the possibility of rats, the possibility of bats, but those cute little critters, too, are receiving some of the blame. But for the moment, not everyone is worried. With only one case so far in the country, bushmeat...
I think that the one thing that's obvious is that no one really knows where the coronavirus or all these viruses comes from. They think animal to people. Well, now we're talking about people to animal. So animal to people, people to animal, people to animal, animal to people. I don't know about you, but I'm a wildlife advocate. And I hate to see all of this. I mean, who do you choose between? The billions of people out there or the millions of animals that are left?
Meet AirPix, the world's smallest and easiest aerial camera.
In Berlin's parks, spring may be in the air, but most likely also particles of the coronavirus. Still, some left their homes to catch a bit of fresh air exercise, and enjoy some family time, all the while generally keeping the recommended distance. These could have been some of the last weekend outings for Berliners, as a possible nationwide lockdown was on everyone's minds.
I heard from friends in Spain how depressing a lockdown is. I don't want that, but I'm afraid it's going to happen.
Maybe the weather will also play a role, and that people stick to the recommendations. We hope so.
Of course people shouldn't gather in large groups. It's unnecessary, so that's a sensible rule. But a couple going for a walk or enjoying some food in a cafe, keeping the appropriate distance, why not?
Food.
Okay, Goebbels. I don't know if you follow my show, but I was recently in Brussels for 2 years, a little more than 2 years, and we hosted German interns to the Parliament, the EU Parliament, and I can tell you it's amazing to me how easily young Germans can be shifted from the left to the right, because like one guy who was there and he was reading the Hunger Games and he wanted me to read it, and I was like, yeah, no thanks, because it's just pulp bullshit, right? Although, I mean, I love the girl who's in it. She's a champion of the left. But, you know, he was from a left-leaning family in East Germany, and he was very easily leveraged with money. So he had gotten his job there, and he was actually manning a telecommunications post between Europeans and the Transatlantic Partnership. And one day I got to sit in there and watch the communications going back and forth, and I got to tell you, it's really scary the way these people all get together. They have all the power and they use it to their advantage, their economic advantage. And they were setting up what eventually would become a trade deal between the United States and Europe. And this guy, who had a great background, just sold out everything. You know, so he could be one of the few Germans who goes around the world, mainly to Brussels at that time, but I'm sure he's gone elsewhere, selling out. And then there was another one who was very left-leaning, and she went on to do NGO work in Africa and other places. But I got to say that the whole thing stinks. The whole system stinks. Even the people who are do-gooders, right, tree huggers and stuff, they're an echelon above the rest of us. They get well taken care of and everything, and they're taking care of they're putting a band-aid on a worldwide problem is what they're doing. And and not all of them are like that. I could tell you horror stories about NGOs, the Red Cross, etc., and how they're infiltrated by intel, and they do horrible things all around the world. Why do you think people are scared of us? Why do you think that the Al-Qaeda and other organizations are able to promote the horrors that they commit? They have a basis in reality, okay?
Flights canceled, borders closed. The number of cities on lockdown across South America is rising. Cleide left her home in Manaus, Brazil 4 days ago with her husband and daughter for a long-awaited 20th wedding anniversary celebration in Rio de Janeiro. It never happened.
They closed everything the day we got there, and we were desperate to return for fear we may be trapped there. So we've been rerouted through airports in 5 states.
Her story is becoming the new normal as lines grow at airports to change or cancel flights, and residents are being requested or mandated to stay home.
Brazil has banned travelers from the EU and 9 nations. It's also closed its borders to only neighboring countries except Uruguay, although trade will still be allowed. The measures are in effect for at least 2 weeks.
Brazil's decision came on the heels of complete border closures across much of South America. Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, and Suriname have all locked their borders to...
And they won't stop the virus. They won't stop it. They'll slow it down. I hate to say it, but the prognosis is that we'll be living with this virus and whatever the next version of this virus is for 100 years. Okay? It's sad that we're not willing to do what it takes to halt this thing in the long run, but we're not, and I don't see us doing it. I think in the United States we're going to see, I've already seen in Kentucky, my state where I'm at right now, I've seen it go from 1 to 50 something, and let's see, I already tried to look, but let's see again. So global numbers are, they're doubling every 2 or 3 days. And it was just a week ago that we had our first one. There it is, Kentucky. Holy shit. It was 50 something yesterday. Now it's 103 with 3 dead. It takes a little longer for people to die. People are fighters. It's bad, people. It's bad. Look, I've been on here a long time now. 2 hours and 18 minutes. I'm sure there's a lot more that I could talk about, but I'm just going to leave you with a song. I'm going to leave you with the song that I opened up with, Into the Night We Zoom. I hope you all have hope. I hope you all have health. And I'm just going to leave you with that. Leave you with the song. This is Martin Drummond with Progressive News, signing on. Okay, so stay safe, people. See you next time. Hope you enjoyed the show.